Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. This is Coding Together, and tonight, as promised, I am going to be showing drag and drop functionality inside of a browser. My name is Savani. I am a programmer with 25 years of experience in the industry, and right now I am out of work, and so I can focus more time on my own projects, and recently I have been focused on the Visions virtual tabletop. Last week when we ended our stream, we'd gotten to the point where I was rendering cards on the screen, and tonight I'm going to illustrate drag and drop. This is going to be overall how this will be applicable whether you are a Rust and Vue developer or a JavaScript and React developer. The technologies are almost identical. They all function in much the same way, but this is really focused on doing it from the Rust perspective. Before we begin, I am going to go ahead and fire up the application as it is existing right now. GDN. Okay, and I am just going to show you where we are at the moment. Logging in as the GM, it's basically just like this. Pretty much where it was last week, although I've done a significant amount of refactoring over the course of the last several days. But there's a lot more to be done, and I have more than just this going on at the same time. But the idea is that by the end of tonight, we will want ways to grab hold of this card or grab hold of a card from this menu and just drag it out onto the display. Now, in order to understand how to do this, we're going to go over to the MDN documentation. I'm going to go ahead and close that for the moment, and we will do this. Here we go. Okay, so I used this documentation to start figuring out how to do this to begin with. Effectively, MDN documents 3 different ways in which this can be done, and we only have to pay attention to one of them, and that being the version in which the item that we want to drag is on the screen in our application, and we're going to drag it to another place in our application. If we are leaving the application or coming into the application, things get quite a bit more complicated. Now, this describes that we need to know the item that's being dragged, the underlying data that needs to be transferred, and the drop target. Turns out it's all overall relatively easy, and there's certainly going to be a degree to which I am leading you to the solution that I have already found. When we start dragging, there's going to be a drag start event that gets fired. It's going to fire on, it will fire on the item that is being dragged. And then when you release it, there's going to be an on drop event that gets fired on the object that you dropped. I'm going to write some notes in. No, I'm not going to write any notes in here. Instead, what I'm going to do is actually open the file where I'm going to be creating the components. What is going on here? That's what's going on. We'll just start out with some commentary here, and I'm going to quickly refresh the things that we just talked about. We need to know the item being dragged. We need to know the underlying data to transfer, and we need to know the drop target. When a drag begins, there will be an on drag start handler that fires. And when dragging ends, there will be an on-drop handler that fires. Now, something that MDN points out is that things are not draggable by default. And so, like, obviously can't drag this. We're going to log in, enter. And if I try dragging something here, just nothing happens. It instead selects. The selection itself is draggable to some degree, but the card isn't. So there is an attribute that we have to use to designate that an item is draggable, and then we've got all of the handlers that we need to set up. So, given that, what I want to do is create two components that I can wrap around any other component. One of these components will make the component draggable, and the other one will make the component a drop target. I'm going to start out tonight just by creating those two components in their barest form. So I'll come over to our file, and I need to make sure that this file gets included in the build tree. So we'll go here, mod drag drop, and then pub use drag drop star. Close that. Odd that the build is taking a while, but I'm going to go ahead and start coding here. Okay, cool. So now use u prelude star, and there's many things that I already know, but they're not relevant at the moment. First, we're going to define the properties for one of our components. Let's see, what did I name this? Yes, here we go, DragSource props. And there is only one property right now, which is going to be the children, because we are wrapping around a bunch of child elements. Now we're going to create the component, which accepts a DragSource props parameter. And returns HTML. And we're going to start out just very simple. HTML children.clone. Close that. And that should be just fine. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with a drop target. Okay, both of those are there. Neither one is being used. So next, I'm going to go into the GM view. And I want to open the currently visible card. So let's see here. Card edit, extant card, sidebar card gets rendered in some way. Here we go. So the sidebar card. This could be either a card that already exists, or it could be a new card. If it's a new card, then we don't want to do anything. I don't want to be able to drag new unsaved cards over onto the desktop. But for a card that already exists, an extant card, we're going to go ahead and wrap this, the DragSource target, or the DragSource component around it. And since auto formatting does not work inside of the HTML macro, we'll go ahead and manually format that. That looks pretty good. We'll save this and include DragSource. oh, the children are a private field. You have to make the children public. You have to make all of the fields public. There we go. Now, thus far, basically nothing changes. If we go into the HTML, there is... Oh yeah, there's not even another component involved because we don't generate any new HTML from this component. So let's start generating something here. First, we're going to just make this a div that's going to wrap around the children. And then in order for all of the drag animation to start working, we have to set a draggable property. Come over and refresh, and this card is now draggable. You can see the animation here. Of course, it's not going to do anything because we're not telling it what to do yet. And we don't have a place to take anything. Let's create a place to take things. Really, I just want, at the moment, to be able to drop things onto the tabletop. And I already know from experience that I need to wrap this entire thing, or I'm going to end up, like, if the tabletop is, like in this case, empty, air quotes, there won't be a target to drop anything onto. So I'm going to wrap around the entire container for the tabletop. Okay. Now, absolutely nothing we can do to test this at this point. If we go look in the DOM tree, we will see that at least it is present. It's going to be this completely unnamed thing. Not really all that useful or interesting at the moment. So the next step is that we need to figure out what needs to be dragged, and we're going to, or we need to figure out how to do the drag communication. And for that, we'll go back to the MDN documentation. And in fact, what MDN defines, aside from this draggable property, is a data store. This data store is where, when the onDragStart handler fires, as shown right here, you set data into the data store. And then when you drop onto a target, you get that same data out of the data store. And the browser handles all of the difficulties of ensuring that when you, like, the drag start event and the drag drop event are all working with the same drag event. So let's start doing this. We're going to create a drag event, or we're going to first handle the onDragStart. And so that means going into the drag source. Let's see here. Yeah, I wrote a great big complicated function which we will get to presently, but not quite yet. So go ahead and define a new function, or the handler onDragStart. This is going to be a callback. There's nothing to clone yet. Yeah, okay. What I'm trying to do is, like, build up to the final version here. We're just going to go ahead and log. There we go. And so now we can see the little message saying that the drag started. In fact, let's get a little bit more fun. Let's start using the event or the data store. I already know that accessing the data store gets complicated, so this is why I extract all of this out into a separate function. In fact, I think I want to do no, I'm going to go ahead and do it like this. So I'm going to call onDragItem and give it the drag event. Now I'm going to come down here and do fn onDragItem. Okay. First of all, we're going to call the drag event dot data transfer to get the data transfer object. Data transfer. Oh, right. Data transfer and drag event don't exist in or aren't compiled in by default. So you have to go into your cargo file and add 2 additional features to WebSys. Need drag event. I don't know why these aren't enabled. I don't know why not all of WebSys just gets enabled. Drag event. Well, I want to reorder this anyway. Data transfer. So save those. And a bunch of things get rebuilt, and here we go. Okay, so getting further, in this case, the error being data transfer is going to return something, and it is in a position to be trying to return. This function onDragItem doesn't return anything. Importantly, data transfer might not have anything. So at the moment, I'm just going to unwrap it. And assuming the unwrap succeeds, I'm going to save that. Next, once we've got the data transfer, we need to, in this case, just set the data. Set data here requires that you specify the format of the data that you're setting, and then the actual data itself. I'm just going to drop just a simple message in here, so we're going to do text plain. Save that. And so long as that compiles, we can move on to the next step. Great. The next step is going to be to set a drop handler. And what I want to do in this drop handler is I want to access the data transfer object again, and I want to retrieve the data that's being transferred. So, 2 things that have to be done. First of all, we need to set an onDragOver callback. This one is just to stop the default behavior. I'm not sure what the actual default behavior is, but it does prevent your component from becoming a drop target. That's got to be an error in my notes. I have like in my notes, I'm not specifying that this is a callback, and that really shouldn't work, although maybe I'll come back and try that again in a bit. Okay, now we need to define our onDrop item. So again, we're going to get the data transfer. And then let data equals data transfer.getData. And then let's log this. GetData may return, or GetData will return a result. So we're going to unwrap this thing and log unclosed delimiter. Okay, there we go. Let's go into the code, and what we should get now, we've had the refresh. I'm going to grab the card, drag it over, and what we get is the onDrag item event, the onDrop item event, and then the data that's transferred is this sum data that I hard-coded in. So there we go. We've got communication working. The next step is to be much more explicit about what we're wanting to transfer. Technically, at the moment, I only want to transfer cards, and in order to keep things, well, just the workflow of my application means I don't even need to transfer the entire card. I just need to transfer the card ID. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up, but I'm also going to be a little bit more generalized just to make sure that I can expand out the drag and drop behaviors later. So derive debug clone. Okay. An enumeration with only one variant is not necessarily an enumeration, but like I said, it'll make it easier to expand later. I'm going to go ahead and add a bunch of error cases so that I can start making that a bit more robust. Okay, so this is the data that I want to transfer. Before I start figuring out where this data is going to come from, I'm just going to verify that it in fact works by hard coding something in. In this case, we are now switching to JSON. So Saturday JSON to string draggable item card ID default. And this needs to be unwrapped. Okay. If I do the same thing now that I did before, if I just drag it over, no data gets oh right, because I'm not requesting the correct data now. I ran across this exact same problem while I was developing all of this and spent probably a good 30 minutes debugging things before I realized that the problem is that this format string has to match. So we come over, drag this over, and we can see that a card ID was just transferred. So that's cool. Let's build out the rest of the infrastructure. So, drag item. There's a whole bunch of places where things could fail. There's not really anything that we can do with the failures. The callback can't return anything. So we're really just going to, at least for now, until I figure out how to do better error reporting to the user, for now we're just going to capture the errors and log them. First place that an error can occur is in the data transfer. The second place is in serialization, which is weird. I've never seen a case where Serday can fail to serialize something, but there's a reason that it returns serialization errors. And then the third one is set data itself can fail. Because we're going to do all of this in one function, I'm going to be chaining things together. So this is going to be a little complicated. There's a lot of map error and then and a few things like that going on. First of all, let the result, which is going to be, what does set data return? This is going to be the final. There we go. Okay, it's either going to be nothing or it's not going to be a JS value. It's actually going to be a drag error. Start out with e.data transfer, and we need to convert the error into, in this case, the error is nothing. The error is just that something's not there. Data transfer returns an option. So we're going to convert it up into, using OK, or we're going to convert it into an error. Now, assuming that succeeds, we'll call and then. We have a valid data transfer object. For this, we're going to serialize the data. I'm going to go ahead and parameterize this. So toString, if it fails, we're going to do map error, drag error, unserializable. I know how I just did this in my notes, but I think result drag error. Oh yeah, okay, so we're in good shape. It's a little bit simpler than what I wrote in my notes. Oh wait, no it's not. I actually have to write it in here because I need the data transfer object. Okay, all of that builds just fine. Now the last thing, if let error, we're going to go ahead and log the error. And if you're a Rust developer and you're wondering why I do like log format and error format, it's because the log and error functions don't, or the log and error macros, which come from glue console, don't actually support any formatting codes that I know of. I haven't investigated it more deeply. It's just been easier for me to call the tried and true format function in order to get more complex formatting. Okay, so that builds. Even though I don't know how to trigger any of these errors, what we do know now, though, is that the application isn't going to crash because we are catching and at least logging all errors that can happen. Unfortunately, this does mean that if an error happens in here, drag and drop is going to fail and the user won't know why, which is not ideal, but I don't know what to do about it yet. Let's go ahead and verify, or go ahead and test this. And come over, grab a card, drag over, and yes, we still have data transferring. So the next thing is, how do we get the card ID? This system has to remain generic. It has to not actually know what data is going to be transferred, or more to the point, it has to be told what data is going to be transferred. We have this draggable item thing here. Let's make that a parameter. What did I name it? I named it poorly. Hence, that would be why I went ahead and parameterized item down here. There's going to be this complication. We need to clone item in order for it to be available in the callback. I don't know why the color coding, that's why it's not working. There we go. The closure is still implementing fn once. Ah, right. Clone the item, move it into the function. It's still not right. Okay. I'm gonna break this down into several lines for a moment. So this is what my clone macro expands out to. And what this error is saying is that I am moving a variable item out of the environment. This took me a while to figure out, but a Rust closure can really be thought of as a structure that has a bunch of variables in it and then a function. And the thing is, those variables need to continue to be owned by the structure. If I do this where I clone the data, I've cloned it into the structure, but then here in calling the function, I'm then moving the data out of the structure and into this function. And if you're doing an fn, that isn't allowed. If you're doing an fn once, it's totally allowed. But this needs, the nature of U is such that this all needs to be callable more than once. I could probably imagine why, but I don't actually know what it is. So in order to fix this, we have to, in here, we can clone the data again, and that should prevent moving. Yes, that prevents moving, although it's a little bit counterintuitive. I think I know who I would ask to help understand that. Anyway, with that explanation done, I'm going to go back to my macro. Okay, and now DragSource needs to have another property given to it. Item is now required, and this error message, it's long and verbose, but it effectively means that not all of the properties have been passed to it. So we'll go back to our drag source. The thing that I want to pass to it is the card ID as a draggable item. So item equals draggable item card.id.clone. And we know what the card is because the card has already been pulled out here. We know we're working with it. We just clone the ID into it. Because IDs are random, I'm going to add just a little bit more data. It's not actually necessary, but it'll be useful just to demonstrate that this is working. I'll include the card title. Got to include draggable item. And titles are optional. I believe I have changed that in a branch, but I'm not sure which branch. Okay. So now, let's see if this works. Come back into the cards, open Emil's coat, drag it over, drop it, and what we have is the card, which has Emil's coat as the title. We'll do the same thing with Audrey Hall's electric cello. And we can see again, that works. So this is all really cool. The next thing that we need to do is we need to decode that information on the drop side. Let me find my decode function and we will start implementing. Here we go. Pulling data out of here, you grab the data transfer, you get the data, you then have to decode the data. So this is a JSON Saturday from stir data. In fact, this probably works. Ish from stir Saturday type parameter t is declared. We need to say what we're going to get. What was from stir result? Okay. And again, in this function, we're not doing any of the error checking. We're going to come back to that in a moment. We come over here. We're going to drag the electric cello across. And clearly, we are successfully deserializing the data. So now we'll do the error handling as well. And originally, I did this a little bit differently, but it's fine. I can modify things on the fly. Let result equals e.data transfer again. We're going to OK OR this. And then transfer.get data. Again, have to make sure that this, your format, matches this. As a side note, I don't really understand why the MDN website documents this as it's supposed to be the format. where did that go? Set data. Like I go to here and it's like set the format and the date, string representing the type of the data dragged. I think this is really just key and value, because it's not like the format gets enforced in any way. Maybe there's some subtlety that I don't know about, which is why I'm kind of just conforming, but it's a little bit weird. So we're going to get the data, map an error. So if anything goes wrong, and that's the transfer. Yep. If everything goes right, then we've got some JSON string. We're going to deserialize it. And again, we're going to map the error into something that we can work with. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's not good. It's matching the wrong thing. Take that away. Okay, all of that looks right. Now let's do something with the result. Match the result. Actually, not match it. Yeah, actually, we do want to match it. I've gone a little bit off script from my notes. If the result is okay, we're going to just log that. We're going to log the data. And if it's an error, then we're going to log the error. Save that. Got some compile errors, of course. It did not understand. 103. From stir, Saturday JSON from stir. Yes, I have to specify what it's supposed to be. Yep. One positional argument forgot to provide an argument. Now, if all of that's good, and it certainly compiles, which is a good sign, come to the cards, drag this over, and we are still getting the correct item drop with all of the error handling in place. The last bit of this is what to do with this item once it's dropped. So we're going to pass in a callback. In this case, I'm going to be uncreative in my naming and give it the name callback, and we're going to specify that it should be a draggable item, and what we will do is call it. Although with a callback, you don't when we're dealing with these callback objects, we don't call them like functions. We emit a callback. So we'll save that. Of course, lots of things are going to fail because onDropItem doesn't take a parameter yet. I'm going to quickly check my notes here. Yep, everything is still doing okay. We'll call it onDrop in this case. I'm going to pass it in, so pub onDrop is a callback that takes a draggable item. We'll save this. I expect several different errors to occur. Well, no, I know one that is just going to occur, so let's solve it. We're going to clone onDrop and clone it again here. OnDrop is borrowed, and it may the drag event may outlive the borrowed. Oh, there we go. Got to move it. Okay, so now we go back. So all of this seems to be working, but we need to give it an action to perform. So let's go to the drop target. On drop, we're going to do something really basic at the moment, just to prove that it works. Like, there's never a time when proving that it works isn't a great idea. There we go. We'll just log it. We'll make sure that log is included. Awesome. And let's be more clear. Going back to here. We'll drag this over. And here we go. We've got the GM view drop target. So we've got the card ID. And really, I'm going to now take out the title. We don't need it. For our purposes, we only need the card ID. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now it's time to do something with this knowledge. Let's, for a moment, just talk about what we're doing, and that is we are changing the location of a card. So when we drop it here, we want to update in the server the location of the card and then have that information get propagated back to the client. I believe that for my demo, I cheat that last part just a tiny bit. Let me check here. Let's see, move card. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Okay, well. Now I want to preface this with, from here on out, what remains of this lesson is applicable to my own application and much less to yours. The portion that's going to be most applicable to you is this drag drop set of structures or a set of components. But I'm going to continue on so that you can see this like doing a real thing. What I know is that it's going to be easier to do this in a separate function. So we're going to say async fn move card to. First of all, I need my application client. Oh yeah, I see what I'm doing here. Sort of. Yeah, okay, got it. I want the state of my, like the entire GM view has a view state. I want to get this because that's how I look up the cards, or that's how I look up the current state of the card that we're going to be moving. And then there is a destination, i.e. where the card needs to be moved to. So first of all, let's retrieve the card itself. Except I'm not sure that I want to do this. I think that maybe, in fact, instead of the card ID, I want to transfer the entire card. We're going to stick to this, but if you look at my code later, don't be too surprised if you see me transferring the whole card. So go ahead and find this. Go ahead and save that. All of that's good, except that move card 2 isn't being called in any way yet. So I need to figure out when to call it. And we want to, at the moment, we want to call it whenever we drop a card on the tabletop. So let me grab a function for, or let me write up a function for that inside the context of the tabletop. Yes, this is an older version. Not quite right, but it's fine for now. Do I have the client? I've got the client, and I've got the view state. So let on drop on tabletop equals clone. I already know that I'm going to clone some data. I'll just put in a placeholder for the moment. Let's create a new callback. So this should be called anytime that we drop a draggable item on the tabletop. We're going to match the item. There's only one thing to match against, so this is kind of a, okay, great, good job doing the match. I don't really like how deep this goes, though. I kind of want to find a way to... Oh, I know how to change this. Yeah. WASM bind gen futures spawn local yeah, okay. Going very far off script at the moment. Async fn on drop handler, something like that. It needs the client, the view state. These are the same parameters, almost the same parameters. A draggable item and a destination. The rain just started here. So we're going to match the item against a draggable item card ID. That's the only thing that it can be, but if that's what it is, we're going to say move card to, give it the client, the view state, the item, or the card ID, and the destination. And otherwise, there's nothing else to do. Except, of course, to fully specify my parameters. And now we're going to come back up here. And instead of doing all of that logic, we're just going to do a WASM bind gen futures. Oh, make sure to await this. Nothing happens unless you await it. And we are going to spawn in the local context on drop handler. What does spawn local require? with a client, a view state, an item, and location tabletop. Auto formatting isn't working, so there's definitely some issues. First of all, the clone is wrong, but first of all, I know that I need to clone client and view state at minimum. So let's do that. Okay, that's not bad. We'll borrow the item, don't need to copy it. Callback from move. The closure implements fn once, not fn, because I am moving these things out of the closure and into the function. So we're going to clone that, and that, and that. Actually, I don't need to clone that. Borrowed value does not live long enough. That's a little... Oh, it's odd because I'm not awaiting. I tried to reduce the nesting, it still didn't get reduced. Especially because I need to clone all of the data again in order to have the future. It's really kind of a pain. This is like the one disadvantage of doing this kind of coding in Rust. Okay, that compiles. Is this really everything? I feel like there needs to be one more thing done in here, but we'll find out in a moment. Let's come over here. We'll grab a card. Actually, I want a little bit of debug printing. Oh, okay, so the main thing that I'm forgetting is that I'm not actually using this callback yet. Let's put it somewhere. On, drop, on tabletop. And then jump up to my view component. Hopefully that's right. We will find out. And then going to the drop target. This is where finally we use it. Save that. Things are failing. Because I have to clone it. Because of course I do. I always have to clone it, don't I? Yeah, okay. Wait. Also, on drop on tabletop needs to be a callback, and I did not declare it as such. Yep. I tried to avoid nesting. I'm still 4, 5 indents deep here. 6. Why is it still angry with me? That is a callback draggable item. The trait is not... what is this really saying? Line 556, we have this trait FN visions card ID is not implemented for you callback. Oh, maybe let's go back to the first error. Drop target on drop. Trait FN drag drop. Draggable item is not implemented for it. I don't think I understand what's going wrong here. So going back to my notes, I'm going to clone some data. Callback from clone view client view state. Yeah, that's not looking like the issue. Oh, wait. It's not implemented for callback visions card ID. That implies that I have declared drop target on drop. Draggable item. And as always, I'm going to have to clone Okay. Is it still angry with me? Yes, because I typed things incorrectly. Scrolling back. Yes, that's also true. I need to emit things instead of calling them directly. Here's the problem. Line 367, item is it expected a card ID, it found a draggable item. Wait. On drop on tabletop. Oh, that was the whole problem the whole time. I mistyped the whatever that is. I'm going to very quickly remove just a tiny bit of boilerplate here, and then we can go back to we can actually test the app again. Does that work? Yep, cool. Okay, jumping over here, refresh done, switch to a card, open one, drag it over, and there we go. It does load. I'm not actually sure why it... yes, okay, things update because I send the message to change the location of the card to the server, and then the server replies on the WebSocket with an updated list of cards. So that's why we get things dragged over here. But of course, I'm also not closing this. I think I want to go ahead and close that. Let's see if I can do that. I have to look at my reducer's actions. There's view card, which I believe is what is populating that sidebar. On card view, yeah. So let's clear that. Let's be able to clear that. Oh yeah, it's already there. I just have to call it on drop on tabletop. I think here, nah, we'll handle it in the message. So if we get, if we're in here and we update cards, okay. If we get into the card updating and the card that we currently have open right here is no longer in this location, then we want to close it. So the way we figure this out, maybe I just handle it in the update card section, or in the update card reducer. I think that's what I'll do. Oh, in fact, I tried, actually. Update card, let sidebar card equal to match sidebar. If it's an extant card. Okay, if sidebar card, this is for when a card gets, okay. If the card ID equals the card ID, then this is what the sidebar card becomes. Okay, that's fine, but so this is if there is an edit to that sidebar card, it gets pushed out to the client. However, if that edit is that it's no longer, the sidebar inherently has to be the GM's inventory. So if card ID and card.location equals location GM, then we do that. I'm going to take all of this, not equal that, we'll say none. So that should close the sidebar card if it no longer exists in the GM's inventory. Yes, perfect. That's what I wanted it to do. And for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and restart the server. No, actually, I don't need to. Not for the next step. The next step is actually starting to trailblaze just a little bit, and that is that I want to be able to, there we go. I want to be able to drag these cards back into the GM's inventory. And so here's where I'm going to start getting a little bit experimental as I try to figure things out. It shouldn't be difficult though. So I'm going to jump into the, I'm going to jump into the tabletop. Come down here, there's, oh wow, a whole lot of extra, oh, that's test code. I can ignore that for now. We'll go into the cards panel. Here we go. Now, for each card, there can be a card element. We're in the cards panel, So we're going to go ahead and make these draggable. And we need to give it an item, which again is going to be a card ID. Card.id.clone. There we go. Draggable item is not declared yet. Cool. So that's now a source. Now I want to make the GM's inventory a possible destination. And the inventory is this area over here. So, back over in the GM view, it's going to be available images, PCs, DropTarget, view, sidebar, the sidebar. So, but it's not actually just the sidebar. It is in fact a particular sheet that is in the sidebar. No matter how much I refactor this code, I find more things that need refactoring. That's the wrong sidebar. This sidebar right here is actually way over here on this side where it lists the characters. This is the sidebar. Let's go to the cards page, which I defined back up here. And the cards page is a button and a list of cards. And currently it doesn't have, it's not actually a full component. So let's make it a component. Make it a drop target. And then the drop target needs to have, already I have forgotten my own parameters. It just needs to have an on-drop function. On drop on GM inventory. And we're going to clone this. And now we need to define it. I think we'll define it by just copying the current on-drop function that I already have, on-drop on tabletop, on GM inventory. And the only change is going to be that. So that's probably cool. I'm going to copy this. Drop on GM inventory. This is feeling clunky again. So jumping to the view props now. Okay, that's looking good. There should be some things. Oh, maybe there's not any more things. Let's find out. Come over here. I'm going to drag Emil's coat over. Oh. And that is working. Probably I want to do something a little extra to give some feedback. Yeah. Okay, so last thing that we will do, let's give some feedback here, which I believe should be done with on drag over. The element has a draggable item being dragged over it every few hundred milliseconds. That's probably it. Yeah, so probably I just want to change the class of whatever is going, or change the class of the target to reflect, or like border it or something. So let's see here. So there's on drag over e.prevent default. That's not right. There we go. And then we'll say, kind of need a self-reference, I think. Yeah, this could get, oh, no, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. Let styles equals CSS. Import that. We'll say, I don't think I can use hover, so we'll just say active drop target. And it's going to be, I'm going to go really simple at the moment. I feel like I'm doing something wrong there. Border, I'm going to do 1px solid red. That seems okay. So now let current styles equals, don't even need that. Let current styles equals use state CSS with no data. So this should be a use state handler of a style source. Let's clone it. So that should by default be nothing, but if we've got an on drag over current styles dot set, it's kind of weird, but it should work. As soon as I've cloned that, I need to clone both styles and current styles and move that. Yep. There we go. So let's grab this. Gonna drag Emil's coat over onto there, and that works. So there's some feedback. Of course, I don't have anything that undoes that, but if I drag Emil's coat back, there we go, that works. So on drop, I obviously want to clear the style. And I do feel like I've got a bunch of errors in here, but maybe I don't. I don't. Just the syntax highlighting isn't catching up. So once I drop something on there, that clears. But of course we've got this problem. What is the final event? I believe it's drag leave. Yeah, that's all it is. So on drag leave, that did not work. Ah, because I did it wrong. That's why it didn't work. Perfect. And then I'm not going to worry about the style at the moment. I'll update the style later offline. I think the last thing that I want to do is have these themselves be draggable. I shouldn't need to open the card in order to do it. So that should honestly be incredibly easy compared to everything else that we have done so far. It is a little bit tricky because of how lists render things. So let's see here. List. Yeah, so I've declared a list item for a card. Where all is that going to be used? It's only for the cards page, I think. Yeah. So we're going to rename this. Not rename it, but we're going to wrap it. So struct draggable card. I don't like having all of these here. This has been an awkward place to put things for a while. I'm going to move it all up. Okay. I don't actually need a new thing. So list item for card. We've got self. We're actually just going to do. Actually, that's really weird. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. DragSource. Again, these cards are just the label because they have to be kept short in order to fit into the view. And the item is self draggable item card self.id.clone. Let's go over, try things out. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. That was delightfully easy. And so that actually is where I am going to wrap things up. This is definitely different fare from normal. Normally I'm just doing random, not quite vibe coding, but not too far off from it. But tonight it really was more of a tutorial in how to create a new component and how to use the drag and drop APIs. And I hope actually that you find this really educational. You're not going to be able to find this file immediately, but a file almost identical to this will show up in the repository in the next few days. Currently, this is based off of a branch that has gotten intensely messy, and I'm doing a massive cherry pick and committing each of the cherry picks separately. And in doing so, I'm doing a little bit more in the way of refactoring, just constantly trying to keep complexity under control. But this file will end up in this file will end up going into main as soon as effectively I have card rendering merged into main. So if you've gotten this far, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it, and I hope that you get a lot out of it. I am going to try to do a lot more in the way of more structured educational videos and less in the way of just vibe coding, which means preparation in advance, which, again, I don't have a job right now, so I can do that. Next week, probably I'm going to deviate from this application in order to test out some teaching material that I'm working on developing for an upcoming Rust conference. I presented a first version of it at the local Code and Coffee over the weekend. It didn't land quite as well as I wanted it to, but I learned a lot, and I think that with a significant restructuring of how I present the information, people will be able to follow along better. So I'm going to try that next week. If you're interested, tune in, 9 p.m. November, I guess that's going to be November 10th. Yeah, 9 p.m. on November 10th, same place. That's it. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your night and have a great week.